Amen. We want to do our final lesson in Embrace 2, lesson number 8. And we want to embrace forgiveness and reconciliation. Reconciliation and forgiveness, that theme has actually been running through the entire Embrace 2 because it is actually practically impossible for you to have healthy relationships if you do not have forgiveness and reconciliation, isn't it? Whether it's in the family, whether it's in the community, whether it's in the workplace, whether it's in the church, there must be some form of forgiveness every now and then. I bet you that every one of us who is seated here, at one point or the other, you've had to forgive somebody. Am I right? Or somebody has had to forgive you. And I can also confidently prophesy that before the end of the week, you will need forgiveness. Okay, let me put it this way. Before the end of the week, somebody will offend you. And you will have to forgive them. Sometimes the degree of the offense is such that maybe it's not a very difficult thing to forgive, isn't it? But sometimes the degree of the offense is such that it is so difficult to forgive. Does anybody know what I'm talking about here? All right? So sometimes the degree does matter. So this particular lesson, we just want to remind ourselves. Because again, our faith, the entire faith, Christianity, is based on what? Talk to me. It's actually based on forgiveness. The only reason we're actually here worshiping is because we have been forgiven. Isn't it? And the reason why Christ went to the cross is that so that we may be reconciled to him. All right? And even as we move along in that lesson, you'll be able to see that. So it basically means that for us, forgiveness is at the very core of our faith, is at the very core of our relationship with God. So I think it is important for us to keep reminding ourselves. And one of the reasons why we have to keep reminding ourselves about forgiveness is this, simple. It is never easy to forgive. Am I right? Every time it's different. And sometimes the offenses can be so painful because the person or the people who have offended us are people that we trusted so much. Maybe it's a close family member, maybe it's a close friend, maybe it's a spouse, maybe it's a parent, it could be a child. And it's difficult, it's hard. So even as we begin this lesson, the purpose of the lesson is not to take you on a guilt trip. All right? The idea is not to take you on a guilt trip, or maybe you're finding it difficult to forgive. The idea is not to make you feel bad about it. I think the idea for the whole lesson is just to remind ourselves and depend on God's grace. We acknowledge the fact that forgiveness is difficult, but God's grace is sufficient. By the way, do you know that there is absolutely no offense that cannot be forgiven? There is nothing that anybody can ever do to you, no matter how difficult and no matter how bad, that you are not expected to forgive. Every offense is actually forgivable. It can be difficult, but it is possible through God's amazing grace. So are you ready for the lesson? You have your book with you? So we want to be able to help ourselves appreciate the importance of forgiveness in restoration of broken relationships. So by the time we're going home, probably we'll have a better understanding of the biblical meaning and importance of forgiveness in restoring broken relationships. We'll be able maybe to have a fresh appreciation of healing that comes with restoring broken relationships. And finally, that somehow God will help us by his grace to commit ourselves to, restore some broken relationships in our lives. Now, good interpersonal relationships are God's gift to humanity. Without exception, human beings cherish and thrive best in environments that uphold and nurture healthy relationships at all levels. Accordingly, any breakdown of relationships leads to human suffering directly proportionate to the significance of the particular strained relationship. Others, like in work environments, bring untold pain and heartache, leading to sometimes even to paralysis in life. We also know that broken relationships account for innumerable emotional and physical sicknesses. Lives are threatened and occasionally lost through negligence of God-given relationships. In other words, we realize that unforgiveness has far-reaching effects on us. And unfortunately, sometimes, when we live in a state of unforgiveness, maybe you've been offended and you continue living with that state of unforgiveness. Have you ever heard yourself, or have you ever heard somebody saying, I will never forgive you for what you did? Or maybe you've said it yourself. The heart was so deep and you, in a moment of frustration, you just say, I'll never forgive you for that. And sometimes you think that you're punishing the person who offended you. But if you do not forgive, by the way, sometimes the consequences are far-reaching. On the person who has not forgiven, not on the offender, but on the offended. And sometimes, and those of you probably who are medics here, you know that some of the sicknesses that even come to us, or sometimes things like depression, sometimes can be as a direct result of people who are bitter in life, people who are carrying issues. Oh, so and so hurt me, that person did that and the other, and you live a very miserable life. So may the Lord help us today that in case probably you even hear that God will actually help you to release certain people and release certain hurts in your life. Again, just to remind you, we are not coming from the premise that it is easy. And we are not coming from the premise that we are condemning you if probably you've been struggling with unforgiveness. We are here to reason together and talk to one another. And we all acknowledge that forgiveness is difficult, isn't it? But by God's grace, it is possible. So finish that sentence by saying, it is difficult, but by God's grace it is possible. Now, I want you to talk to your neighbor. You have a neighbor next to you? And I want you to discuss and maybe tell your neighbor and I want you to be like really honest. What is the most difficult thing to do on your part when seeking to restore a broken relationship and initiate reconciliation? I know all of us at one point or the other, we've gone through a broken relationship, all right? Whether it's with a sibling, whether it can be a relative, it can be a friend. Somebody maybe you invested in, but then that relationship broke and maybe there was an offense. So the question is, what is the most difficult thing on your part to do when seeking, maybe trying to restore that relationship? I want you to be as honest as possible. Remember, we are helping one another, all right? So be as honest. Please don't give those nicely packed spiritually, theologically. Just be honest. Just say, my problem is I'm very proud, whatever it is. Let's take one or two responses. You can actually report your neighbor. Now you wish you didn't say anything. Eh? One or two responses. I know we have some microphones, so anybody? Let's be honest. Can we be honest in church today? Let's be real. The most difficult thing. Just tell us one thing. Somebody? Let's listen to my sister there.
Is it one? Good afternoon.
Afternoon to you.
From our discussion, the one thing that came out is forgetting.
Forgetting?
Yes.
Explain.
You may forgive someone, but you realize that you cannot forget what that person did. So it becomes a challenge. And then 2 is actually trying to sit down and call this person to come and actually reconcile with this person, to discuss the issue. Yeah, especially when it is that person who wronged you.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right? So it's difficult to forgive and forget. That's what you were saying. Is she right?
One mic and then
Some of you are looking so guilty. Goodness.
give somebody so that.
And some of you have such a big memory. But I will not say which gender. You didn't hear it from me. You did not hear it from me. All right? And then again, also just approaching the person, isn't it? Especially if they are the ones who offended you. And you're even praying, you even make it your prayer, Lord, make them come to me, There's somebody right there at the back.
Okay, praise God. From our discussion, we discussed Like for me, I can forgive somebody when she hurts me, but it will be difficult if she has kosea me and she doesn't want to apologize. So, itakuwa ngumu sana.
If she has kosea you and she has refused to apologize. Okay. Oh, there's a gentleman right here.
Praise God, Church. So now my neighbor is telling me one of the most difficult things for her to do to initiate reconciliation and forgiveness is admitting that she's on the wrong. So she knows very well that she might have been the one who offended this other party. But being the very first person to admit is one of her biggest... Yes, yes.
Are you in any way related?
Yes, we are. She's my elder sister.
Oh.
Yes. That's about it.
All right, good. So you know you're wrong. How many of you go through that? You know deep inside you're the one who's on the wrong. But you try to skirt around the issue and you try to turn the issue around and what have you. Because it's difficult admitting you're wrong, isn't it? It's really, really hard. I mean, let's be honest. All right? Anybody else? Any other response? Okay, there's somebody right here. Just lift up your hand again. Okay. Somebody there behind you. Yeah.
There is another one here.
Praise God.
Oh.
Sorry.
Okay, I think...
Okay, so let's start with her on this side, and then let's start with you, and then you come to you.
All right. Good morning, church. For me, I've shared with my group that what I find very difficult to do is, yes, after I've admitted that I'm on the wrong, owning up and the responsibility that comes with making sure that I don't do this thing again.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, trying very hard not to do the same thing again. Oh, good. Uh-huh.
Okay, another one is pride on the person. Like when the person you've hurted says that, why should I forgive you and what for? Like he doesn't want to admit or to want you to apologize to the person, or because she or he has hurted you, you also don't want to accept the forgiveness from the other person.
Yeah. Actually, in fact, that's the word I was looking for. Pride. In fact, I think pride usually is the biggest hindrance most of the times to reconciliation, isn't it? Because if I'm the one who is offended, I'm thinking, why should I humble myself? I mean, don't they have sense enough to realize that they have wounded me? You know, that's how we think, isn't it? Somewhere in your mind. And then sometimes I'll hold on because I'm feeling too proud. Or if somebody walks up to you and tells you, by the way, you know you offended me. Usually the default reaction is what? We become defensive, isn't it? You know, and sometimes, and some people are very good at turning around the whole situation. Have you ever approached somebody and they offended you and you're trying to tell them that you offended me? They turned it around and actually made you look like you are the one who has a... I mean, and you know, oh, maybe you're being, oh, they tell you, oh, you're being oversensitive, what is wrong with you? And at the end of the day, you actually end up apologizing. But a lot of times it's actually pride. Because a lot of times, if only I could just own up, all right? I've hurt you, and just to come and say, you know what, I really am sorry, you know, and just humble myself. Or the other way around, maybe you come to me and say, maybe you offended me, and for me to just, oh, I didn't intend to, but I'm sorry, all right? Because normally the rule of life is this, and especially where conflict is concerned, is that even if I did not intend to offend you, the fact that you got offended means I owe you an apology. And I should apologize, then explain later. All right? Not to try to defend my position and whatever. But a lot of times that's what we do. I think we are human, and we find ourselves sometimes struggling with some of... And those are real issues, isn't it? Whether you're looking at it from the marriage point of view, whether it's at home, whether it's in the workplace, I think all of us, we suffer from that, and it's not always easy. Now, forgiveness is a first step toward restoring broken relationships. There's no way, absolutely no way can you restore any broken relationship unless you are willing to forgive and to forgive one another. What is forgiveness about? Forgiveness, notice, I like this explanation here, is an intentional, conscious, deliberate decision to release feelings of resentment and vengeance toward a person or group that has harmed you, regardless of whether you think they actually deserve forgiveness or not. Notice, and I want us, if you don't get anything else today, but you get this explanation, this is important. It is in other words, whether I feel like, it's not a feeling. Forgiveness goes beyond my feel. Because how many of you always feel like forgiving? Man, you say, I feel like forgiving somebody today. Anybody? You must be the most spiritual person in this room today. We never feel like it, isn't it? But notice, it is I choose. It's a decision, a conscious decision that I make. It's deliberate. And it's a decision to release feelings, notice, of resentment, because normally when somebody has offended you, there will always be feelings of resentment or vengeance toward a person or a group that has actually harmed you. And this is regardless of whether you think or even believe that those people deserve forgiveness or not. Are you with me? You know, one of the people I think that really challenged us in this area was Nelson Mandela. Quite frankly, I mean, when you consider the kind of person that he was, no wonder he became a legend. I mean, honestly, that and being locked up and put in prison, not for crimes, but simply because of what he stood for, his only crime being a black African. And you're put in prison for 27 years. I'm not sure how many of us will be so gracious to actually choose to forgive. It's interesting, last week, and you know, you go to South, I love the nation of South Africa. I mean, it's a beautiful place. So, but last week, you know, of course, we were down there, a couple of us, senior pastors, including our bishops and what have you. So, but you know, you go to some quarters in Johannesburg or even Cape Town, but mainly in Johannesburg, and you still sense there's still something in the air. You know, there's still a bit of unrest and discomfort between the two races, you know, the white South Africans. So one of the evenings, I take this Uber. I was going to see somebody, visit somebody in the evening, and so the Uber driver happened to be a white South African. And, you know, I've been there several. So now I've come to learn, normally a lot of times, I'm not saying all of them, but a lot of times, when the white South Africans discover that you are black, yes, but not a South African, they actually treat you better. I'm serious. So this guy, I mean, for some reason, you know, have you ever taken a taxi or an Uber and you want your peace, you just want to get where you're going, but this guy talked the whole way. So the guy starts yapping and talking about the blacks and what he really thinks about black South Africans, and I'm just thinking, you know, number one, I'm in no mood for conversation. It's been a long day. But then number two, I am a black. So why are you telling me about my fellow blacks, you know? I mean, and you know, I get that. But then you realize that the tensions are still real. Then until the day when I'm traveling back, we're traveling back, so we come to the airport. So as I've already checked it and everything, so we want to go through, not customs, but security. So as I'm coming in, of course, now to go, you know, now there's a frisk you, of course, you come and everything goes through the scan and everything. So as I'm coming into this security zone, of course, you know, the way those winding lines, the way they normally make them there. So there's a whole bunch of white South Africans in front of me. So I was just coming in. So on the, just across, there was a glass window, or a glass wall. So just across, I saw this black South African, you know, one of those immigration guys, all right? So he was on the other side. But that line was actually specifically meant for airline crew and diplomats. So as I'm coming in, because it's a glass partition, so the guy looks at me and starts motioning me. So I'm thinking, what have I done, you know? So then he asked me, look, I can't hear what he's saying, so he kind of points to my passport so that I show him. So I showed him my passport. Then the guy, like, motioned vigorously, like, get out of there and come here. I'm thinking, okay, what's going on here? So I go there. Then the guy picks my passport. Then he looks at my passport. I say, my brother, you know, of course, in typical South African, whatever, he says, you know, you're a diplomat. Why are you queuing there? You know, in those situations, you don't argue. You don't argue, you know. So I say, okay, fine. So the guy stamps my thing very quickly. In fact, one of the pastors I was with also benefited because when he saw me leaving, he also came behind me. So, of course, so very quickly, then I exit, then I go and find this priority, like whatever, and I didn't have to queue. And it was a long queue, by the way. So I wondered, what was that all about? Then I realized what was going on. I realized when he saw the white South Africans in front of me, he was just trying to play the racial card. You get? So because I was the only African that time, so he was just trying, he was taking care of his own. Okay, that for me, I don't care, because I benefited. But are you getting the point? So you still find those, so you go to a country like that, and then you think of somebody like Nelson Mandela, because apartheid, by the way, was a really terrible thing. And a man that can be able to stand up and say, you know what, begin talking about reconciliation, you say, wow, that was quite a legend, I must say. All I'm just saying to us is this, friends, that sometimes we go through those kind of really difficult offenses, all right? Because sometimes you're judged by the color of your skin. You're judged according to things that you had no choice over. But it takes God's grace to still say, you know what? I choose to forgive. Are you with me? So forgiveness is intentional. Forgiveness does not mean forgetting. Is that good news or bad news? Because somebody has said already here that, yeah, it's one thing to forgive, but how do I forget? Of course, it's not possible to forget, all right? Nor does it mean condoning or excusing offenses. It doesn't mean that what you did to me, if I forgive you, it doesn't mean that it makes it right. But it is a process through which a victim undergoes a change in thought, feelings, and attitudes regarding an offense, and let go of negative emotions such as vengefulness, with an increased ability to wish the offender well. So it's a change of attitude. Hurt. Because when you have been offended and you keep holding on to that offense long enough, do you realize it also changes your prayer? Have you ever found yourself praying silently in your heart? The Lord, I pray that person gets run over by a truck. Ever have to go through that? Okay, I know you're all very nice, saved, spirit-filled, tongue-speaking. So you don't go through those kind of struggles. So pray for the rest of us. But you see, forgiveness means that I can now be able to pray for that person who offended me and pray for them well and wish them well. That if that person actually came to me maybe for help tomorrow, I can be able to help them. It doesn't mean that I excuse what they did. All right? I'm not saying that what you did to me was okay. It doesn't mean that I forgot. Now, again also, it just changes the nature of remembrance. Because if I remember and that thing still hurts me, then something, God still has to work in my heart. But it means that I can remember that thing. Yes, it was offensive, but I can be able to remember it, but now I am over the negative emotions of the whole experience. Are you with me? All right? The other day I had a conversation with somebody from the nation of Rwanda. And this person was telling me, well, I've never been there, but they were just telling me how, I think it's annual, every year they normally have a memorial for the genocide. You remember the genocide in 1994? And sometimes that remembrance is so graphic, it's actually so graphic. And it is so graphic that sometimes people have actually started criticizing it and saying, how is this thing helping us as a nation? But you see, so I don't know what side of the divide you'll be on, but for them, it is what is helping them deal with the pain of the genocide, because a lot of people lost their entire families, isn't it? So for them, they're not just remembering for the sake of remembering, they're remembering so that they always remain cognizant of the fact that this is what hatred can do, all right? But also because many of them are still struggling with coming to terms with the fact that they actually lost entire families and your entire, your parents, everybody died and what have you. So, but you see, the idea is you're not remembering so that you can look for ways to be vengeful, but now you're remembering for a different reason. Are you getting the difference there? I know the line is very thin, and one has to be extremely careful. But, sometimes I think it's important, all right? So forgive us our debts as we also forgive our debtors. Remember Jesus Christ teaching his disciples how to pray. Part of that prayer is this line. Forgive us our debts as we also. It's one of those lines in the Lord's Prayer you wish was not there. Because the implications are simply that, Lord, as I'm asking you to forgive me, I have fallen short of your glory, that in the same way, in the same breath, that I should also be willing to forgive those who offend me. That means then, I cannot expect God to forgive me. Although the penalty of sin has been paid, I cannot expect God to forgive me as long as I'm not forgiving other people. Isn't that's huge? Isn't it? In fact, the question is, if God forgave you in the same measure that you forgive others, can you think about it? Imagine if you forgave you in the same way, in the same measure that you forgive others. How many of you will still be born again? How many of us will still be walking in the faith? What is forgiveness about? Forgiving another person is a personal choice that is not dependent on them. It's not dependent on the other person. It is your right to tell a person, I forgive you. Forgiveness is the exercise of our God-given freedom to set others and ourselves free. It allows both the offender and the offender to move on from the feelings of anger, bitterness, and resentment that we can. But let me also say this very quickly, especially in a relationship. Forgiveness is an important thing because it helps you, if you forgive one another, it helps you mend that relationship, a broken relationship. But here's the deal. There are times in certain situations that maybe the person who has been offended wants, of course, to mend a relationship. And, of course, you choose to forgive this person who has offended you. But that person who has offended you may never ask you for forgiveness. What do you do? What do you do? Because I expect it should be, oh, please I forgive you. And that person should also say, I also. Or they should also ask you for forgiveness, isn't it? It's a two-way street. But there are times, by the way, you find yourself in a situation, because there are people, by the way, who do not have the maturity to ever ask for forgiveness. You're very quiet in this church today. Are you with me? Now, in those situations, it is important for you to realize that if you have been offended in this situation, all right, still choose to forgive, because then forgiveness is for you, not for the other person. Because if I hold on to that unforgiveness, I think I'm punishing the offender, isn't it? But who am I really punishing? I'm actually punishing myself. It's a self-inflicted prison. All right? So some years ago, I was in a situation where, a fellow minister, a fellow pastor like myself, and we had worked together and everything. And this guy, honestly, if you were to, he was way, much older than myself. So he's somebody probably I could have called dad or something, or a father. He was almost should have been a father figure to me. But the guy really completely mishandled. I'm just a young pastor. I'm just a young man coming up in the ministry. Completely mishandled me and kind of really brought a lot of pain and hurt to myself and my wife at that particular time. And for a period of quite a long period of time. It was really, really painful. And I remember, months started coming in and going and what have you, and trying to move on and trying to move beyond past that hurt and that pain, because then had already involved so many people, and my wife and I had been really, people gossiped about us, prayers were prayed against us, and all kinds of things happened, all right? And it was a really difficult time, and we knew, in those situations where only the two of you know the truth, but nobody else is interested. Are you with me? Have you ever been in such a situation? The unfairness of the situation. We know the truth. We know this is all based on lies. But nobody's interested in the truth. All right? So they want to believe whatever they want to believe. And it was really difficult. We were expecting our daughter at that particular time. It was a really difficult time. And for me, I was struggling. For me to be able to move on. I'm a pastor. I should be able to go through this and go beyond it and what have you. And I remember one day God spoke to my heart. He just spoke to dropped a word in my heart and said, if you're going to move on in the ministry, you need to get in touch with this pastor. All right? Don't wait for him to come to you. He will never come to you. So you know what I did? So I picked up my phone one of the days. In fact, I shared with my wife, and my wife just told me, you know what? If that's what you're feeling God is doing and asking you to do, please, by all means, go ahead and do it. So I picked up my phone. I called him, and the guy was very hostile. So when I called him, I says, of course, he knew my number and what have you. So the first question, we hadn't talked for like about 8 months. So, and this is somebody you've worked with like for a long period of time. So his first question was very harsh and very hard. He said, "What do you want?" Of course, by the way, just so you know, I'm a fighter. Just so you know. All right? Don't let the suit fool you. I can fight. I can put up a good fight too. But, you see, God had already worked in my heart. So I told him, no, by the way, I'm not calling because I don't want anything from you. I don't want us to fight. I just told him, in fact, what I did, I just said, I trust that you're well. You know, I was very polite and everything. So I told him, you're a pastor, I'm a pastor. I feel the way we ended things was not right. A lot of things were said. I think it's important for us to sit down, have a cup of tea. And I said, I'm inviting you for a cup of coffee. So, well, graciously he came. So I invited a friend of mine, an elder, somebody who's much older. And I said, I want you to come. I told him what was going on. I told him, I want you to come as a witness. I want you to hold me accountable. So he came when we met for this cup of coffee. And we sat down and we talked. And of course, the gentleman, this other pastor, had a lot of things, accusation, oh, you did this and that. So at the end of the day, because all those things were actually based on lies. You know the way somebody keeps coming to you and, oh, he did this, he said this, and nothing is true. But you see, he did not have the maturity to call me and find out, I was told this, is it true? All right, so all these things were based on lies. So I told him, by the way, number one, everything you know, everything you've been told is actually based on lies. None of that stuff is true. I wish it was, it is not. But I told him this. I said, but because you feel so offended with me, I said, please forgive me. All right? Now, you will expect in a scenario like that, these are two pastors, that the other person will also say, to Samehe. But I knew him. He never apologized. So what I did, I knew he was not going to apologize. So I had already planned myself, and God had given me wisdom. So I said, please forgive me. And I said this. And I also told him this, and I said, and for everything that I feel you offended me, I forgive you. All right? He didn't ask for forgiveness, but I said, I have chosen to forgive you. Because I knew it was for me, not for him. Now, unfortunately, a few days later, after that meeting, he went around, telling everybody, that guy, he came crying to me for forgiveness. I sat over there. I said, mwanaume mzima. Really? Of course, I didn't regret because it was for me. And I knew I will never move on with ministry if I had held on to that hurt. In other words, sometimes you have to humble yourself. Look like the fool. Be faulted. People will talk behind your back. But time will separate the lies from the truth. Believe me. Now, here's the deal also, even before I move on to the next slide there. The truth is that even sometimes when we have done our best, some relationships, and I'm being very honest here, may never be restored back to where they used to be. Are you with me? Now, that means that there are people in your life, and I'm not saying this to advocate that that's the way it's supposed to be, but it's just God's honest truth. There are people then you're better off loving from a distance. Okay. Are you with me? I don't have to call them. I don't have to invite them for a cup of tea. But if they were ever in trouble, I will be there. If they ever need my help and they come to me, I will be there. But I'm not necessarily going to pursue a close relationship with that person. Are you with me? That is life. Tell your neighbor, that is life. Forgiveness helps one to manage the hurt. Holding another person responsible feels better and justifiable, but leaves our inner woundedness getting worse by the day. So how do I embrace forgiveness? Forgiveness best makes sense when we remove the focus from blaming others to understanding ourselves. So stop blaming other people. Are you with me? Church, this is a hard saying. When you carry unforgiveness and hurt and offenses, you become very miserable. Isn't it? then then you begin blaming everybody for the fact that you're not happy. When you begin blaming other people for your misery, you're giving them way too much power. Are you with me? No one else is responsible for our heart but ourselves. God has given us, every one of us, the power and responsibility on how to respond to everyone and every. Now, take back the responsibility for your well-being. Now, again, please, friends, hear my heart on this. These things we are sharing are hard. Are you with me? There's no expert on forgiveness. We are all in the same ship. Every hurt, every offense is different from the previous one. I guarantee you. All right? So don't feel guilty. The idea, again, is not to make you feel guilty. The idea is for us to say, Lord, we need your grace. All right? Let us therefore make every effort to do what leads to peace and to mutual edification. Resolve to live in harmony and at peace with everyone. It's a resolve that you make. Purpose to bless rather than to curse those who persecute or mistreat you. Number 3, do not repay anyone evil for evil. Number 4, purpose not to take revenge because vengeance belongs to the Lord. Number 5, choose to act in the opposite spirit, contrary to your offender's expectations. Difficult things to do, friends, but these are things when we commit ourselves, our lives become more fulfilled, we become more at ease and more at peace in our lives. Not easy at all. When I choose to act in the opposite spirit, in the opposite way that the person who has offended me expects me to act. When they expect me to curse them and yet I'm blessing them. When they expect me not to talk to them, yet I'm there stretching out my hand or even sometimes even hugging them. All right? You become happier, you become better. You're more at peace and you're more at ease. That is why, listen to me. That is why you should be very careful to respond or to react. Actually, let me say not to respond, to react to an offense in haste. Has somebody ever sent you a text, for example, and it aroused certain ungodly emotions? Just lift up your hand. I'll say it from here. I'll pray for you. Is there anybody? Yeah, nobody ever goes through that. Where do you people live? But have you ever received, it can be a one-line message, but it suddenly you feel your heart rate has changed, like a cold sweat. Anybody goes through that? And then what is your initial default reaction? You want to respond. You want to set them right. Anybody goes through that? Have you ever realized if you respond immediately, you will only aggravate the situation? Because you will say some things, all right, that you didn't mean, but because you did it out of a sense of anger. But what if you took 10 minutes, go and drink some water? By the way, water is amazing. Are you with me? Just do something different, distract yourself, do something different. Then after maybe 10, 20 minutes, come back and respond. I almost guarantee you will not respond the same way you had initially intended. Are you with me? Because you have calmed yourself down, you're more rational, only for you sometimes to realize that the person on the other end who sent you that text didn't mean what you thought they. Do you ever go through that? In other words, don't be quick, don't be hasty. Especially when something agitates you or aggravates you, don't be hasty before you press that send button. Slow down. Slow down. All right? Because sometimes we end up losing relationships that way. Then you realize, the fellow didn't even mean what I thought he actually meant. And because there are people, by the way, who are also not very good at texting. It's just not their gift. When you meet them in person, they are pleasant. But their texts, and they are not very good. I have no idea what I'm talking about, do you? Guard your heart from turning to hate. The primary principle here is the decision not to let your heart become hate. This choice demands recognizing your heart and addressing the root cause. Essentially, this process means accepting that the presence of hate is an indicator of some hurt that demands attention to heal. Why is forgiveness so important? Forgiveness is the key in restoring broken relationships. Now, beneath all broken relationships is the common problem of unresolved anger and resentment, which breeds the two sins of bitterness and lack of forgiveness. It must start with acknowledgement that the other person is hurting on account of you. If your brother sins against you, go and show him his fault. Now, this verse is interesting. Notice, so if somebody has offended you, this is Jesus who is saying. He says, go and show him his fault. Notice the second phrase. He says, just between the two of you. Your first reaction should be to go and show him his fault, to go and address him, trying to resolve the issue. How many are supposed to be there? Just you and him. In other words, there is no room for gossip. Because our natural tendency is so-and-so has offended me, so I will try my best to let the world know what he did. Isn't that what you do? All right? But Jesus said, no, don't do it that way. Go first to him. Now, if he listens to you, you have won your brother over. But if he will not listen, if he refuses to listen, what are you supposed to do? Take one or two others. All right? Like what I tried to do there. So that every matter may be established by the testimony of 2 or 3 witnesses. Now, if he refuses to listen to them, tell it to the church, not in gossip either. All right? But tell it to the church, treat him as you would a pagan or a tax collector. I tell you the truth, whatever you bind on earth will be bound in heaven, whatever you lose on earth will also be loosed in. You notice the progression. This is how you're supposed to deal with conflict. All right? Because by the time it gets to that level where now you're informing the church, of course through the church leadership, it basically means that that person has refused to take responsibility. And what normally happens, if somebody will never take responsibility when they're on the wrong, especially also within the community of believers, that person becomes toxic to the rest of the body of Christ. And they begin bringing divisions. Trust me, I've been in church a long time and I know and I've witnessed it. So what Jesus Christ was saying, if it gets to that point, what Jesus was saying in essence is, as a church, if we have tried all the levels and the person persists in doing whatever and refuses to take responsibility for their actions, Jesus was telling his disciples, then at that particular point, the church is at liberty, all right, to proclaim that that person is not a believer. You see how serious it is? Because that's what he said. He says, treat him as you would a pagan. In other words, we no longer recognize you as a member of the body of Christ. There are times we've gotten that close to doing that with certain members. That is serious business. And let me tell you, there's no bad place for you to be at when the church spits you out. Do you know you are no longer under any spiritual covering? You're vulnerable. Remember what the Apostle Paul in the church in Corinth talking about church discipline. And there was this particular gentleman who was living in immorality in the church, and he would listen to nobody. What did Paul tell the church? He says, cast that person out of the church so that he may be tormented by Satan. You remember? So that probably, peradventure, maybe his soul may be saved. In other words, when you're cast out of that fellowship, and I'm not talking about the physical building, but where the church actually says, so-and-so has refused to submit to the authority of this church, the leadership, has refused to take responsibility for their action. So from this particular day, we are declaring that that person is no longer a member of this church. We are no longer recognizing them as a born-again believer. They are on their own. God have mercy on your soul. Are you with me? Sometimes some people suffer, go through all kinds of hell because of that rebellious spirit. Now, giving and receiving forgiveness. While most people desire to forgive and to be forgiven, many do not know how to carry forth the process. To understand this better, let's look at that table. You have a table there in front of you. So for giving forgiveness, acknowledge that the other person is hurting on account of you. So when I'm giving forgiveness, you have to acknowledge. Receiving forgiveness, acknowledge that you are hurting on account of the other person. So if I'm going to receive forgiveness, if I'm going to receive any form of forgiveness, I mean for the person now who is supposed to be giving that forgiveness, I need to acknowledge that the other person is hurting on account. I'm hurting on the account of the other person. Number 2, ask God to help you do the right thing toward restoring the broken relationship and in obedience to His will. In receiving, ask God to help you to do the right thing toward restoring the broken relationship in obedience to His will. In giving, again, go directly to the person who has offended you and offer to forgive him or her. So don't wait for them. Go to them. In receiving, willingly receive the offender seeking for your forgiveness without making it hard for him or her. So if somebody ever came to you saying, you know what, I know I offended you, but I wish to make things right. Really, I'm sorry. Your reaction or your response should be to receive them. Give them a chance. Are you with me? Because a lot of times, what we feel is if somebody walks up to me asking me for forgiveness, I feel vindicated. Am I right? I start feeling now I have on the upper hand. Let me make them feel something. Let me make it hard for them. So sometimes I tell them, no, I don't want to. I have nothing to talk to you about. And we make it very difficult for the other person. Recognize the good intentions of the other person in his or her asking for your forgiveness, and then determine to bring this healing to the other person by asking his or her forgiveness. In other words, you notice that bringing the reconciliation takes the two of you. All right? There's something I have to do as the one who offended, and the one who has offended me also has something to do. Humbly forgive the other person, genuinely and generously. And then joyfully accept the offer of forgiveness from the other person. The challenge of forgiveness is a hard lesson. It has to be learned. It is not a natural instinct. This is the reason some people will literally better die than forgive. Ever heard somebody tell you that? I'd rather die than forgive you. Have you ever said that, by the way? I know you won't admit, but let me tell you, there's something that should never proceed out of your mouth. Let me tell you this. Hear me. If you open your mouth and declare certain things and say, I'd rather die than forgive you, trust me, you will die. And you will die without forgiving. You think that if for example, I offend you, and then you came and told me, Pastor Jesse, I'd rather die than forgive you. Let me ask you a question. All right? If you die, you think I'll die with you? You think me I'll die because you refuse to forgive me? See me, I'll live. I'll continue with my life. All right? And I think that is the folly of making those kind of statements. Because you think you're punishing the other person. The truth is you are killing yourself. So don't say those kind of things. All right? Asking to be forgiven whether we are the offenders, when we are the offenders is actually very easy. Forgiving another person is harder and calls for much openness to self. So it's easier sometimes, by the way, when I'm the offender. All right? Not always, but sometimes. But sometimes when I need to forgive another person, that when it becomes a little bit difficult. That's why Jesus said, why do you look at the speck of sawdust in your brother's eye and pay no attention to the plank in your own eye? How can you say to your brother, let me take the speck out of your eye, when all the time there's a plank in your own eye? You hypocrite, first take the plank out of your own eye, and then you will see clearly to remove the speck from your brother's eye. Some offenders seem like they are deliberate and do not care that we get hurt by their actions. So number one, forgiving another person does not make you the weaker person. In fact, let me tell you, weak people can't forgive. Are you with me? Instead, it gives you strength to make the right choice of moving on with life. Forgiving somebody is a sign of strength, never a sign of weakness. One has to choose to be vulnerable, to say they are hurting and tell their story. Number three, there is so much heartache when we are hurt by a person that we trusted. Implications. Forgiveness releases a person who has wronged us from the penalty of being separated from us. It also clears the way for your relationship to develop unhindered by memories of past wrongs. Number two, importance of reconciliation in restoring broken relationships. The goal of restoring a broken relationship is a reconciliation of two or more persons who have previously been alienated by a conflict. Many people, however, do not know how to properly and fully achieve this goal. Now, once forgiveness has been given and received, effort must be invested in closing the existing gap of separation. In fact, the question is, what is reconciliation and what does it entail? And I'll leave that maybe for you, maybe later in your small groups you can be able to discuss that. But what avenues do we have for reconciliation? Number one, remind yourself of your love for the other person and your sacrificial commitment to restore the broken relation. In other words, let love always be our guide. Because somewhere deep inside, even when somebody offends you, you still love them, isn't it? And maybe that's what makes it even much more painful and even more difficult. Greater love has no one than this, and he laid down his life for his friends. Now, number two, address the heart first by talking to God in prayer about the conflict before talking to the... Have a discussion with God. Talk to God about it. Say, Lord, I'm hurting here. This brother, that sister, this happened, and Lord, it's painful, I'm hurting. And by the way, God is not offended by us when we are brutally honest with him. By the way, he already knows the state of our heart, doesn't he? So if I don't want to forgive somebody, I'll tell him, Lord, honestly, tell God, I honestly don't want to see that person. I don't feel like forgiving them. And then somehow God's grace is amazing. It has a way of softening our hearts, isn't it? Take a humble attitude before God and the other person and admit your part in the conflict. So humility is important. It's an important aspect. Remember earlier we discovered that the reason why sometimes we don't forgive is because of pride. Humility is an important ingredient if we are going to restore relationships. Remember Jesus Christ telling his disciples that if you're offering a gift to the altar, if you came to church for worship, you're offering your gift, and there remember that your brother or sister has something against you, leave your gift there and in front of the altar and first go and be reconciled to them, then come and offer your gift. Number four, admit your own contribution in breaking the relationship and confess it. It takes two to tango, isn't it? All right? And it's important just to humble yourself and say, you know what, I think I also played a part in this mess, in this conflict. So just be humble enough to say, I'm also guilty one way or the other. Because reconciliation is never about win-lose. Are you with me? You're not trying to prove a point. It's not about me winning and you losing. Reconciliation is about win-win. We either both win or we both lose. It's not about win-lose. Honestly ask for forgiveness and generously grant it. Ask for forgiveness. Oh, please forgive me, my brother. And if the other person also, just say, you know what, I forgive you. All right? If you forgive other people, when they sin against you, your Heavenly Father will also forgive you. But if you do not forgive others their sins, your Father will not forgive your sins. And bear with each other and forgive whatever grievances you may have against each other. Forgive as the Lord forgave you. Note, when you ask for forgiveness, the forgiving person forfeits his or her right to ever bring the matter up again. This way, he or she chooses to remember the particular offenses no more, just as the Lord our God does. This is also true when you grant forgiveness to another person. You put the matter behind you and agree never to bring it up again. In this way, the forgiveness is an indispensable component to restoration of a broken relationship. So, delete old files from your memory. Are you with me? I knew that I was not going to get an amen. How does effective reconciliation take place? Number one is communication. Communication is the golden rule in restoring relationships. Even with good intentions, the process of restoring a broken relationship is often hampered by poor communication. Communication is so vital because sometimes conflict happens Not because the two were intending to hurt one another, but simply because they misunderstood one another. Have you ever maybe in conflict with somebody until you had opportunity to sit with them, and after explaining what they meant, you realize, we were not fighting for it. There was nothing to fight about here. Ever gone through that? You realize there was no issue really. I mean, it's just that maybe the way I saw it and the way that you saw the whole situation. All right? It's like you've ever heard of that analogy, like if you take 5 blind men and you bring a big elephant in the room and you ask every one of them to touch a part of that elephant. One touches the tail, another one touches the trunk, another touches the tusk, another one touches the stomach. Every one of them will tell you their own perspective. But at the end of the day, you and I know it's an elephant, isn't it? So the one touching the ears will probably say it's a fan. The other one touching the tail will probably say, I'm touching a fly whisk or something. The other one touching the tusk will say, I'm touching something hard. But you and I know that at the end of the day, it's an elephant because we all have different perspectives in different issues. Tuko pamoja lakini. It's interesting even sometimes when you preach as a pastor, you preach a powerful sermon, you prepared, you prayed. Then when somebody gives you feedback on your sermon, you're thinking, that's not what I meant. Did I even say that? Because people hear all kinds of things, even right now. Hear all kinds of things, and sometimes you're thinking, whoa, okay, I didn't even say that, Deliberately choose to attack the problem, not the offending person. Oy, that's a hard one. Separate issues. Talk about the issue. Please don't attack one another. All right? That's usually very difficult for some people. So they forgot your birthday. Now it's become an issue of you. You don't care. You never even think about me. The poor dude is there wondering, I just forgot a birthday. How does that translate into I don't care? So when the guy is harassed and, oh yeah. Then you wonder why he doesn't want to come home. It's getting very cold in here. Is it me or is it the weather today? Number 2, be completely honest in speaking the truth in love. Remember this, brethren, shouting does not make your words true. Now, honesty is an important ingredient. Speaking the truth, notice, in love. Now, let me give you a good example. Most of us coming from the African context and the African culture, if there's one thing we could have learned from, especially those of us, some of the older people, the elders in the villages, in the communities, was if maybe you're an offending person, maybe you did an offense within the community and what have you, and the elders called you, all right? What will they do? They will sit you down. They will go around the issue. All right? They will talk about many things, blah, blah, blah. By the time they're coming to the real issue, while you're there, you have no defense. Are you with me? Because what they're doing is this. They are trying to protect you, all right, while trying to deal with the offense. Because for them, you matter, you are important. So they don't want to hurt you. So they will go around the issue, they will talk about many things, and you are wondering, okay, where are we going with all this? By the time they come down to the issue, you actually appreciate where they're coming from. Because that's the Christian thing to do. So even if I have to be honest with you, I do it in a way that still preserves your dignity and in a way that protects you. Because I can tell you the truth about something about you, and you take offense. It is true, but you actually take offense. I'm looking for something here. For example, somebody can't cook. All right? Maybe it's your wife or you, whatever. There are many ways of saying, okay, there's no easy way. Okay, let me put it that way. But you can actually destroy your own relationship with your wife by the way you approach that issue. Am I right? Isn't it? It's the same way, even vice versa. Maybe your husband, you don't like the way he snores at night. You can tell him in a nice way, or there's a way you can actually tell him, and he will avoid sleeping in the same bed with you for the rest of his life. I'm serious. But it's truth. But it is how we do it, how we say it. In one community I heard that when they want, like maybe you're an offending party, maybe you've done an offense in the community, and the elders, when they will call you, that they will first of all, even before they talk about that issue, they will take their sweet time, they will call witnesses, and the witnesses will come, people who know you, people who are close to you, and for the first part of that discussion, it will revolve around the good things you have done. And they will tell you, everybody will come and say, oh, this person is so nice, this is what they did, oh, the other day, in fact, I needed help, they came, and the one after the other will come, and then they will tell you all this, and they will really build you up, and then by the time the elders now are actually bringing to you that offensive thing that you did, you have been so disarmed. They have first built you because the idea is not to destroy you, the idea is to build you further. Are you getting the point? And how I pray that we will be like that. Let's stop attacking one another. All right? Yeah. I can tell I'm getting a lot of amens this morning. Shouting at people, shouting at your employees, shouting at your children never bears fruit. In fact, when you shout at somebody, the thing that they are left with is, you shouted at me. The point is lost somewhere. Are you with me? Because then they pay attention to the shouting. You should always have a golden rule. One of the things, like in my house with my wife and my daughter, one of the things we normally say is, in our house, we don't shout at each other. Because shouting achieves nothing. If anything, it deviates from the main point. Always. And number two, I can hear you. So you shouting doesn't push your point home. Yeah. So please stop shouting. All right? Tell your neighbor, stop shouting. Even in your office, stop shouting. Going banging tables. I'm the boss here. My friend, we know. Relax. Nobody's threatening your position. Relax. Just relax. In fact, the Bible says the gentle answer turns away wrath, but a harsh word stirs up anger. Number three, remain focused on the current issue and desist from digging up old issues that were resolved in the past. Stick to the point that you're discussing. It's not an opportunity for you to start pulling out old files. Number four, choose to emphasize reconciliation more than pursue resolution of the underlying issues. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they will be called children of God. Number five, show sympathy. Be sympathetic with the pain and feelings of the other person. By the way, they normally say that hurting people hurt others. Isn't it? A lot of times, if you find somebody consistently and persistently like hurting you, it's probably they're also dealing with their own heart. And sometimes I think it's important for us to just put down your weapons and try to understand the other person, where they're coming from. Because maybe they're really going through some real deep hurts in their own life, and maybe they just need someone to love on them, someone to listen to them. And sometimes maybe that person is actually you. How does one initiate reconciliation? Reassure the other person of your unconditional forgiveness or acceptance of his or her forgiveness. He who covers a transgression seeks love, but he who repeats a matter separates friends. Consider and treat any need for restitution and as part of forgiveness. Notice that. Any part of restitution, you should consider it as part of forgiveness rather than a condition for forgiveness. So don't put conditions on forgiveness. Desist from causing more hurt to the other person, irrespective of his or her response to your offer of forgiveness. So just lay down your weapons. do not aggravate the situation any further. Don't try to hurt that other person anymore. Number four, restitute or compensate as much as is practically possible anything owed to the other person. Now, hear me, by the way. This is important because this is one of the issues that sometimes also separates brethren quite a bit within the body of Christ. A lot of times, maybe you borrow a brother maybe some money or something, and now here's the deal. Maybe you borrow with every intention in your fiber of your being, every intention of paying back, all right? But how many of you know that life happens? Isn't it? So sometimes I may have planned to do a certain thing in a certain way, and I was expecting that maybe in 3 months, in a month, or in a year, I was expecting maybe a certain financial windfall, and I'll be able to maybe make right those debts, and I will pay and what have you. But then sometimes things do happen, isn't it? And sometimes I find myself, I'm not able to fulfill my promise. Now, that's not the time for you to avoid the people you owe money. Are you with me? Because that's what we do in the church. Or you meet this brother, he owes you money. But every time you meet him, he talks as if he owes you nothing. He never talks about it, never goes there, never mentions it. It's been 1 month. So you, the person who has lent him money, you're wondering, you don't, and it's awkward. It's awkward because if somebody owes you money, it's awkward for you to keep calling them. Maybe you're in the same Safari group. So what happens? Without you realizing it, it begins creating a certain strain in the relationship. Isn't it? Because I've been meeting this guy told me he would settle this debt last month or maybe last year. And since that time, he has said nothing. All right? And then he just behaves as if everything is okay. Now, I think it's important for us to respect and honor one another. All right? We should not take one another for granted. In case I am not able to meet my obligation, I think it's important, it's honorable for me because I love you, because you're my brother, for me to come and tell you, my brother, listen, here's the deal, this is what happened. I thought by now I was going to get my finances in together and everything, but things have happened. Please forgive me. I may not be able to pay you this month. I can be able to pay you next month. Or alternatively, you say, you know what, I can only pay you half now, but I will make it right in 2 to 3 months. Negotiate again. How many of you know, majority of us, if somebody came up to you and they owed you money and they talked to you, how many of you will be hardline and say, no, you said last month, you must pay me now? How many of you will do that? Hardly anyone, isn't it? Because of relationship, I will probably tell you, no, don't worry about it whenever you're ready, isn't it? But what will happen is, I will feel respected. Isn't it? I will feel, this person actually respects me, this person respects me enough for them to come and explain to me. But when others, what they start doing, they start dodging you, avoiding you. So when they see you entering from that door, then they will exit from this one. In the church. So sometimes we have a lot of strained relationships. And then some people become defensive. I remember one time dealing with a case where one particular, it was actually 2 ladies. And one of the ladies, very gentle lady, and had lent money to this one. And this other one had actually become arrogant about it. Saying, Kwani, she's asking me for that money. Kwani, she thinks I don't have money. I'm thinking, okay, chick, okay, fine. Since you have the money, why don't you just pay? You get what I'm saying? I mean, why are you getting arrogant about it? Just humble yourself and pay make restitution. All right? Simple things, but sometimes we ignore them and then they bring strain in the church and then we begin sometimes taking one another to court. Isn't it? Yeah. Lunchtime is almost here, so now begin to treat the other person as if there had been nothing wrong between the two of you. In other words, pick up the relationship and you don't have to keep pulling those old files again. Now, when do broken relationships need an arbitration and mediation? Now, the process of restoring a broken relationship may at times necessitate the involvement of a third party. Being a non-partisan intermediary, an arbitrator or a mediator should have no other interest except the reconciliation of the warring or hostile parties through an objective process. So sometimes maybe the situation is such that it demands for you maybe to call an elder or somebody both of you respect to just come and help you work through the issue. And I think that is allowed, and I think that's good. An arbitrator or mediator should be considered only after private efforts at reconciling have actually failed. The offended person is allowed to choose one or two arbitrators. And the whole process of arbitration, I think, has its place and is very important. Now, number 2, a stubborn and unyielding offender gives room for the aggrieved person to refer the conflict to the church. All right? If you will not listen, take 1 or 2 witnesses along so that every matter may be established by the testimony of 2 or 3 witnesses. Now, if persistently unrepentant, the church should excommunicate the offender. Just what we've already observed a little bit earlier there. Now, number 4, the church can treat the excommunicated offender as a non-believer. Unfortunately, we don't like to get there. All right? Because God considers a Christian who refuses to be reconciled to another, even after the intervention of the church, to have denied his or her faith in Christ. Such a person is considered dangerous in the company of other believers and should be isolated so as not to contaminate the body of Christ. I pray that none of us will ever get there. All right? Now, what about lawsuits going to court? Now, Christians, according to the word, I think you know this, we are discouraged from seeking arbitration from ungodly secular courts. Instead, they should rather commit such matters to persons of little account in the church. The Bible views 2 believers fighting in a court of law before unbelievers as shameful evidence of failure of the church to mediate. All right? 1 Corinthians chapter 6. If any of you has a dispute with another, dare he to take it before the ungodly or for judgment instead of before the saints. Therefore, if you have disputes about such matters, appoint as judges even men of little account in the church. I say this to shame you. Is it possible that there is nobody among you wise enough to judge a dispute between believers? But instead, one brother goes low to low against another, and this is in front of unbelievers. Now, usually that's a very sensitive area because, again, we cannot advise you either way, but we'll just tell you what the Bible says. The whole idea of should I go to court, should I take that brother to court or not? And, of course, I think in the recent while, I think especially in this country, we've seen even churches taking one another to court. You find a church taking its leaders to court sometimes, or maybe members sometimes, even running to court to take the church to court. I think it's shameful. I think it should not be. All right? And of course, people nowadays have become so sophisticated, they say, well, if you treat me like that, I'll take you to court. I mean, really? We are a church. All right? We are a body of believers. And I think some of those things, are things that we need to avoid. With the goal of reconciling 2 warring parties and aware of the reality of their failure, inability or failed attempts to resolve their conflict, a mediator must wisely create an environment that promises reconciliation. One of the things that is happening in this country today is the legal system encouraging the training of mediators so that people who can actually come in and instead of people going, not just for the church, but instead of people taking, maybe it's a land dispute, instead of you running to court and accusing one another in court and then it drags on for years, the legal system in Kenya today, by the way, is actually appointing some court-appointed mediators. And they're certified. Even for us as pastors, we are actually being encouraged to seek that training. And there's a training that is available for as many as will be interested. Some of our pastors, even here. Did you go for it, Brother Gadesha? Pastor Gadesha even went for that training. I don't know if there's anybody else who has gone through it. But you become certified, and the court can actually refer a matter now to you. Now, the success of those kind of mediations has actually been phenomenal because they say that there are cases in court, that have stayed there for years, and it only takes a few sessions for a mediator to resolve. The legal system is this. Now, I'm not a lawyer, all right, and many of you know this better than myself. Usually, the legal process, if I sue you or you sue me, is usually more about win or lose. Am I right? Anybody who's a lawyer here? Okay. Yeah. Am I right? All right. It's about winning or losing. So I take you to court, I win, or you win and I lose. Mediation, on the other hand, the beautiful thing about mediation, they try to seek a win-win situation for the parties involved. All right? So that at the end of the day, when you mediate these 2 warring parties, they can find a middle ground where somebody can say, okay, fine, maybe I'll meet you halfway, you'll meet me halfway. So that both parties, at the end of the day, they resolve the issue, but also the relationship is not lost. Are you with me? And I think that is the Christian way. Because in conflict, I must be willing to give in to certain things. All right? And you too must be willing to meet me somewhere. So the legal system, normally you find, a case will take, sometimes 10, 20, 30 years. And guess who gets all the money? It is the lawyers, isn't it? And at the end of the day, even when it is ruled in favor of one party or the other, usually the families are devastated forever after that. Because one party will leave feeling that they did not get justice in that whole system. What about mediation? Why can't we do that? Why can't we resolve that? So, as I said, I cannot prescribe for you whether or not to go to court or not. I think that is your own decision. But I think from the Word of God, we are encouraged not to run to court. Look sometimes for an elder or somebody both of you respect, mutually you respect, and say, hey, we have this situation, we have this dispute. Will you be willing to come and sit with us so that we can walk with you this journey? And you'll be shocked. Let me tell you this, friends. You remember just a few weeks ago, or maybe a month or a few months ago, when the president and of course the Right Honorable Raila Odinga stood on the steps of, is it Harambee House, and shook hands. What happened? Suddenly, the whole atmosphere in this country changed, including the economy. The power of reconciliation, all right? Because you remember last year in August and come also October with those dispute elections, and you remember the atmosphere in this country, all right? The people there was so much hatred in the air, all right? In fact, that particular time, my prayer, my desire, in fact, I would even tell my friends that, I said, you know what my desire would be? I wish President Uhuru and Right Honorable Raila Odinga will find it in their hearts to just sit down and talk. You know why? Because up to that point, how are they communicating? Through rallies, through media, isn't it? So me, I say this today, then you respond tomorrow through the media. Let me tell you, as long as you do that, you're not communicating. You're talking over each other's heads. The nature of human beings is this. Even when you find two people who are really angry at each other, if you can manage to put them around, just on the same table, you know what happens? Natural human beings, behavior. Normally, they lay their weapons down. Usually, the first thing is, by the way, have you ever gone through that? Suddenly, your hardline positions dissipate, isn't it? But as long as we are communicating through other means, oh man, I can say anything. Hardline positions, no, we will not. And then the good thing about that reconciliation between the two of them, or whatever happened behind closed doors, we will never know, is that it brought together just the two of them. Are you with me? Because reconciliation is between two individuals, never between two parties. Because if Uhuru had come with his own people, Raila comes with his own people, let me tell you, they will have even fought. I'm serious. Because everybody has vested interest in the whole deal. All right? This one will come here. But you remember by the 2007, 2008, the same thing happened in this country. When they went to Kilaguni, nothing was coming out of that thing. You remember? Until Kofi Annan said, okay, I don't want to listen to any of these other fellows. Just get Mwai Kibaki on one hand and Raila. What happened? Within a short time, they were able to come with a certain form of understanding. Are you with me? Because sometimes when we bring in too many people into a conflict, it never gets resolved. But there is power in reconciliation. Isn't it amazing out of a handshake? that now you notice the atmosphere has changed in the country. One handshake, one. I think we need more handshakes in this country, honestly. Are you with me? How many of you today I know there are people, of course, who have reservations about that handshake because they feel betrayed, or, you betrayed the cause, blah, blah, blah. Honestly, because me, I want to live in a good atmosphere. I don't like hatred. Me, I don't like conflict. All right? I bet you most Kenyans today are feeling happier and more at home because of that one single. Now listen, we don't even know what they talked. All right? we don't even know what they discussed. All we know is, walisikilizana, pahali. The rest are details actually for us. You know, friends, sometimes even in our own families, in our own relationships, in church, whatever relationship there may be, just a handshake is important. Are you with me? Don't be too proud. Willingness and readiness of the concerned parties, these are the initial effort must be invested to ensure the following. Willingness, readiness of the concerned parties to pursue reconciliation. Number 2, acknowledgement, recognition of pain and hurt. Express fully the extent and depth of your pain. Number 3, ceasefire. Decide, okay, let's have a ceasefire. Number 4, covenant. Promise not to hurt the other person anymore in the process of mediation. Number 5, respect. Allow space for the other person's opinions and respect him or her even if you are in disagreement. Sacrifice. Number 6, reconciliation, there must be sacrifice. Willingness to give and take in creating a win-win situation. Commitment. Number 7, pledge to uphold and to act on the agreement and resolutions reached. Even in the law of Kenya, has increasingly recognized the need for mediation. All right, and we've already said that. Friends, here's the deal. I think if we are going to be who God wants us to be, we must be people who desire to be reconciled not only to Him, but also to one another. In fact, let me just say this and then we'll be done. All right? Now, going back to the whole thing about whether to go to court and what have you, sometimes, especially for us as Africans, you know, inheritance is a big deal. Am I right? You know, inheritance, and we fight for it, sometimes tooth and nail. Sometimes, you know, we go to court for, you've had cases here of 20, 30 years, people in court fighting for inheritance, or a piece of this, a piece of that, and what have you, and what have you. Now, I've come to realize that if you are going to enjoy your Christian walk and your Christian faith, and probably sometimes live a very peaceful life, sometimes you have to be willing to be aggrieved. Are you with me? Sometimes you have to be willing to walk away from dispute. All right? Because it doesn't help you. One time, a young man comes to my office some years ago and says, Pastor, please help me. What do I need to do? He says, my father died. The father had died some years back. And he says, my brothers, he comes from a family of brothers, that they were now fighting for the inheritance of their father. There was this piece of land. The father was not very wealthy, but he had some piece of land. So this young man, of course, he also had a portion in that inheritance. But now, to add insult to injury, a brother to his father had come up and said that while your father was alive, this land, we bought it with him. Now, how do you prove that? So even me, I have a share. So now it was threatening to go out of control. They were now beginning to think about going to court. This is what I told the young man. He said, you know, me, I can't tell you what to do. Well, because those are very emotive issues. Issues to do with land in this country, issues to do with inheritance. But I said, but since you've come to me and you're asking for my opinion, I said, I'll give you my opinion. You can take it or leave it. I said, listen, you're a born-again believer? Yes. I said, you have a choice. Today you can actually go and fight tooth and nail with your brethren. You can go and look for lawyers. You can go and do those things. It will take a long time in court and everything. You can do those things. But at the end of the day, you have to be ready for the fact you will go to court. You may even win that case. But at the end of the day, you'll be estranged from your brothers for the rest of your life. Somebody is going to lose. And I said, the other option is this. You either then choose to decide, I'm going to be the aggrieved one. I'm going to humble myself. And I am not going to fight for that inheritance. Rather, I'm going to believe God. Are you still here? I'm going to believe God. God will bless me. I said, that's a choice that you have to make. And I said, if you take that choice, you go back to your home, go back to your brothers and tell them this. And tell them, listen, I do not wish to be party to this fighting. However, if you come to a place where you want to give me my portion, you know where to find me. But in the meantime, as long as you're fighting, I'm not part of it. If you so choose that you don't want to give me anything, it is still okay. Come back to the city, work hard together with your wife, and allow God to bless you. Let me tell you something. I have realized there is peace and joy when God blesses you than when you have to fight for a piece of property somewhere You're going to court using money. You're bruising one another, hating on one another. Sometimes the best thing to do is just let it. Don't you believe that God has an inheritance for you somewhere else? So that at the end of the day, if the Lord should call you home, nobody will come and say, oh, that land or that thing was mine, or we bought it with so and so. Sometimes you have to walk away from conflict and decide it's too expensive. Let me tell you, you will never be a happy Christian until you come to a time where you can actually agree to be the aggrieved one and decide to walk away. It is not a sign of weakness. It is a sign of strength. Are you hearing what I'm saying? I don't know why I had to say that, but maybe you're here, maybe you're in that kind of a situation. All right? Sometimes it is better to walk away. I finish with this story. You remember in Genesis chapter 26, you remember Isaac. Isaac was a son of Abraham, the son of promise. And long after his father had died, Abraham had dug wells all over the place. And Abraham was a wealthy man. And Abraham, of course, had dug wells in different parts and everything. And one day, so Isaac decides he's going to come and claim his father's inheritance, his father's wells. In that time, a well was a sign of wealth. So he comes to one of the places. He comes and digs the well. After he has finished, the enemy comes and says, oh, by the way, that well is ours. What does Isaac do? He doesn't run to court. What does he do? He says, oh, it's like that. In fact, the original name of that particular well, translated, it actually meant opposition. He says, okay, fine, no problem. He moves on to another well. He comes and digs up this well. This one was even funnier. The enemy comes up and says, by the way, just so you know, after he has finished digging the well, the enemy comes and says, by the way, just so you know, the water is ours. You can keep the well, but the water is ours. The ridiculousness of this life, isn't it? So he says, oh, it's like that. No problem. He moves to the next point. He comes to a place called Rehoboth. Are you with me? And in Rehoboth, he comes and digs the well. The Bible says the enemy did not contend with him after that. Do you know what Rehoboth means? It means a place of a lot of room, a spacious environment. And he declared that in this room, in this place, the Lord will bless us. Listen, as long as you are fighting people, as long as you're fighting for space elsewhere, you will never come to Rehoboth. Sometimes you have to decide, I am letting go of that. I am letting go of that dispute. I'm not going to go to court with you. I'm not going to fight with you. Why? Because I believe in a place called Rehoboth, and God is bringing me to that place. And in that place, God will bless me. And here's the deal. When he blesses you, nobody can lay claim. Come on, somebody in this place. When he blesses you, nobody can say they made you wealthy. When he blesses you, nobody will take you to court, because then you will say, the Lord God Jehovah is my Rehoboth. He's the one who has blessed me in this place. Come on, rise up on your feet as we come to the close of this service. So please stop fighting with people. Are you with me? Stop fighting for promotion. You don't have to scheme. You don't have to push people out of the way. You don't have to write those secret emails and letters trying to undermine people. Don't fight. Sometimes they will accuse you of all kinds of things. Let me tell you, I've learned sometimes don't defend yourself. Look like the fool because you know you're coming to Rehoboth. Rehoboth is beckoning you. It is waiting for you. See, when God blesses you, my brother, my sister, that blessing is so sweet. The blessings of God maketh rich, they add no sorrow. When God blesses you, you can go home and sleep. My goodness. I wish I had some believers in the house of the Lord. When God blesses you, nobody contends with you. What God gives you, I don't have to fight to keep it. But when I have to fight people so that I can get certain things, I have to keep fighting for the rest of my life to keep those things. It's a walk of faith. Father, we thank you so much. Come on, just take a few moments. And as we're coming to the close and the end of Embrace 2, I don't know what the Lord is saying to you, friends. I don't know what He's put in your heart even this afternoon. The message of reconciliation, the message of forgiveness. I don't know what He's saying to you, but I ask you and I beg you, by the mercies of God, whatever He's laying in your heart to do, that you need to do, you need to go to some people, you need to reconcile with them, you need to say, I'm sorry, or you need to walk up to certain people and release them from your heart. Please do so. Because probably your next miracle, your next breakthrough is actually dependent on your obedience to what God is telling you. Remember, forgiveness is not for the other. Forgiveness is actually for you. All right? They may not even appreciate what you're about to do, but do it anyway. It's for you. It is for you because of what God wants to do in your life. So with every head bowed, every eye closed, every head bowed, every eye closed, as we're coming to the close of this service, and probably you're here, for you, you're saying, for me, Pastor, I need reconciliation. First and foremost to God. You know that you're not born again. You know Jesus Christ is not the Savior of your life. It all begins, reconciliation begins at the foot of the cross. You need to be reconciled